The House will please come to order. All right, members, I want to outline a little bit of our afternoon. As you know, we're come to the appointed time to address the qualifications of Representative Zwaniter to continue to serve in the 66th House of Representatives. As that is dispensed with, there'll be a decision made whether we continue with introductions or if we go based on what time it is and if we go into committee of the whole. So, and the introductions, I'll just give you a heads up. The bills remaining for introduction were the ones that were removed from the list today, the consent list today. Those are House Bills 31, 35, 49, 52, 79, 87, and 93. Now, those are the ones that were removed from the consent list today. And any member that would like to have their bill considered today, we'll just take them in that order. Without prejudice, if you're not ready to present it today, it'll be laid over till tomorrow without prejudice. If you'd like to get your introduction done today, if we have time this afternoon, we'll proceed with that. And then, like I said, depending on the time of the day and the strength we're feeling, we may go into committee of the whole, depending on what the majority floor leader has for us. So we're at that time of business when we are going to consider Representative Zwaniter's qualifications to continue to serve in the House of Representatives. At this time, I'd be open, the floor is open for motions on that issue.
Mr. Chair, Speaker, privilege.
Representative
I just want to.
Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I announced House Bill 6 and 79 on adjournment today. Because of the 24-hour, we'll have those bills on adjournment at tomorrow.
Thank you
House
for that
Bill
update.
6 and 79.
Members, I think I should probably just line up for the public just a little bit. We have someone up to make a motion. You've been provided that motion and should be on the top of your desks. Just so we're clear for the public that we received a complaint forwarded us to by the Secretary of State's office regarding the qualifications to continue, questions about the qualifications to continue to serve Representative Zwaniter. On the 11th, members of this body last Friday were provided the complaint and additional complaints that had been received. I'm not going to say you got every one of them because they continue to flow in, actually. And you've also received Representative Zwaniter's response, a written response, and a legal memo, and then my outline of the process that I was suggesting to the body. So that was since last Friday. On Monday, yesterday, those materials were made public. And then, and as I say, we are now at that appointed time. So I have Representative Hallinan. Do you have a motion on the matter?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a motion to convene a special committee. I move that the House of Representatives convene a special committee to investigate the complaint concerning whether Representative Zwaniter is qualified to continue serving in the legislature based on his residence. I further move that the special committee be subject to the following. A, 5 members of the House shall be appointed by the Speaker or chosen by lot as determined by the Speaker. The special committee shall hear the complaint and evidence as expeditiously as possible. All proceedings of the special committee shall be conducted in executive session. All records, findings, and proceedings of the committee shall be confidential. Representative Zwaniter may be represented by counsel and shall be afforded reasonable opportunity to be heard and to present oral argument. The special committee shall provide Representative Zwaniter advance notice of each meeting, hearing, or other proceeding of the committee. The chairman of the special committee shall have the power to administer oaths and to compel the attendance of witnesses and the production of documents relative to the complaint as authorized by WS 28-101-107 through 28-1-112. Any testimony made at any special committee meeting or before the House that purports to establish matters of facts shall be under oath. Not later than the fourth legislative session following the date the special committee was convened, the committee shall report its findings and final recommendations to the House. That is my motion, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative Hallinan. The motion appears to be in order. The question is, should the House convene a special committee to investigate the complaint concerning whether Representative Zwanner is qualified to continue serving in the legislature based on his residence and make recommendations to the full House on the matter? Now, members, you have the motion before you. It is debatable. And what I would like folks to do is remain with the motion. I know there are lots of different items that you would want to bring about what the investigation may look into or do, but this is on the motion itself to form a committee and potentially the outline of how that committee shall function. So it is debatable, and it'll be a majority of the quorum, i.e. a majority of the members present, would authorize this motion. Representative Hallinan, you may proceed if you'd like to have some discussion on this.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The reason I have proposed this motion is for those of us who do not feel that they have enough evidence to decide how they will vote in regards to this issue. I know many of you have already made your minds up based on whatever evidence you found, but I have not. And that's why I make this motion. I think that the House is in a very difficult position with this issue. We've all worked with Representative Zwanitzer, and we respect him, and we want to support him. But we also have an obligation to the honor of the House to maintain our honesty in dealing with these issues. And for that reason, I have I've made this motion, not because I have any animosity towards Representative Zwanitzer. And I don't think anybody here should have any animosity towards him. I think that would be a big mistake if we did that. I think the House has a responsibility to deal with this issue so that our people feel that we have looked at all the evidence and have come to a reasonable conclusion. And I think that's the main reason why we need to have a special committee. I believe that the people that would be appointed to this committee by our speaker, should he decide to do so, would put people on there who had not made their minds up and who would give reasonable consideration to all the evidence being presented to them. And then they would make a decision. And they give us reasons here in the House why they decided one way or the other. And then we would decide at that point, with all that evidence that would be available to us, obtained under oath, that we could either support those complaints that have been made against Representative Zwanitzer, or that we would turn them down. I would hope that we would be able to turn them down, but I don't know that for certain at this point. And I don't think that I have the reason enough to say that I would be able to decide right now how to vote on that. So for that reason, I would ask that you give consideration to this request, that we form a special committee that would have the reason to look into these questions and then make a recommendation to us what we would do with them. It's a very difficult situation for the House to be in. And I find it very difficult myself to even propose this resolution. But I think it is the appropriate resolution for this issue. And we can move on with this very quickly. I think 4 days is probably enough for this committee to get all the evidence that it needs. I don't think that will overburden the House. I think we'll have enough time to deal with all the issues before us and give this committee the opportunity. They could set their agenda any way they wish. They can have them at the end of this, at the end of each, at the agenda, at the adjournment of each session. They can have their meetings that way. That way it would not interfere with our work here. And with only 5 members being on it, I don't think we would have the, I don't think we would be taking away from the expertise very much of the House. So with that, I'm going to close my comments. I appreciate your attention to this question. And I very much appreciate you, Mr. Speaker, in allowing me to bring forward this for the resolution of our body. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Hallinan. So members, because the motion is very specific to a member of this body, as you know, the protocol on the body is we do not refer to individuals as we speak on the floor. This is a unique situation because it is about an individual, and the motion is specific to that. So it is not out of order. Should you choose to use the representative's name as we discuss this motion, at least that's my consideration. However, it will be out of order if we start making judgments on anything outside of the question before us, the motion before us, and motivations of other people, may be in the body, or of the individual who the complaint is about. So with that, I see Representative Zwanitzer, you would like to address the motion. And I'm going to give Representative Zwanitzer a little more latitude because he is actually the person who the motion is in reference to. Representative Zwanitzer, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First, I do want to say I do regret this matters before the House and taking up time before the body this session with a lot of important work to do. And I do have the highest respect for my colleague who brought this motion. We served together for over a decade, and certainly no ill will there. I continue to have the highest respect for him. The body is aware of my response to this complaint. It's very public. I sold my previous house and I moved to a different residence in my district. I do not dispute my family bought another property east of town, and I visit it regularly. But I have always intended to maintain my residency in District 43. I continue to maintain that residency now. I've looked. I do not know what further information is needed for the body. I don't believe I have anything more to submit on my end in regards to the complaint. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? Further discussion on the motion? Chairman Nicholas, on the motion.
Thank you. On and against the motion, ladies and gentlemen. So to me, it's a relatively simple issue. The facts are simple and the decision is simple. So there's no need to have a committee to review it. The issue is, does he currently reside in his district? And does he intend to stay in this district? You've heard his own statement. I have a copy of where he lives if you want to drive by it. I've driven by it. I have a copy of his lease agreement where he is currently residing. That's what the issue is statutorily and constitutionally. And so I would ask you not to vote for the amendment.
All right, members. So we're still on the need for the committee. The need for the committee. The motion is about the formation of the committee. I'd like us not to get into prosecuting the case, which may be before the committee, but I'd like us to the need for the committee and your potential individual members' need for more information. Thank you. Representative Heiner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I hope the body doesn't get too myopic about this situation. Before you have to look that word up, it means nearsighted. I respect this individual greatly. He has helped me immensely in my first year in the legislature. And I fully believe he will be vindicated. But I think we're looking too much nearsightedness on this one situation. The speaker prior to our session gave us some background information and material on case studies that have happened in the past. Someday this will be a case study. What we are doing today will be referenced in the future, maybe next year and maybe 5 years from now. But we as a body, how we react will be used as the future precedents. So I think it behooves us to do our investigation, and I fully believe it will vindicate my colleague, but it sets a precedence so that in the future we can continue to investigate allegations adequately and satisfy the public that we are doing our job. We're not on a witch hunt. We're trying to do our job as a legislature body. And I fully believe in my colleague here by the side of me. And I think it will resolve this issue, not only for us as a body, but for our public here in Wyoming. But we're setting a precedence here. Let's not get myopics. Let's think about what precedents we're going to set. And by having an investigative committee in executive session, so that it is continuing to be confidential, we show and demonstrate to our colleagues as well as to the residents of Wyoming that we are taking our responsibilities seriously. Thank you.
Thank you. On the motion, Representative Stivar, on the motion to convene a special committee, please
Honored
proceed.
for the motion. This complaint was filed when we were not in session, and by joint House rule, Senate rules, it says a committee should have been appointed. That's why I'm honored for the motion, because we need to get to the facts.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Representative Yin on the motion to convene a special committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, I think for the bringer of the motion and those in support of the motion, what kind of information are we looking for more than what we already have? So I guess I'm looking for specifics on the type of things that the committee wants to try to look into. Is it that we're measuring how many days that someone resides at a location? Maybe some examples of the kind of things that we're trying to research in this committee for me to be able to make a decision on whether the committee is appropriate or not. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Members, we are on the motion. Like I said, as long as it's specific to the motion and the proceedings, the process, please proceed. Representative Jennings.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So for me personally, I want to answer that question. And what we're looking for is the truth. It behooves each of us. We all raised our hands and we took an oath. And this is one of the most unpleasant things that we're going to be faced with. And so it makes it very important that we get to the truth. I too have served with the good chairman. I want him to be able to vindicate it. You know what? If it was me, I would want for the truth to come out. And I would hope that each of us would want the truth to come forward. The whole purpose to an investigatory committee is to get to the truth. We're tasked with the decision to decide whether or not residency has been violated and is there a vacancy. I don't want to do that too quickly. I've heard it said a number of times, well, I've heard enough, I can make this decision. Well, I can too. But I can't make a good decision until I have all the facts, till it's been actually adjudicated that there's things that we may not know. And I would think that my good colleague, if I were in his shoes, I would want for a good committee to be thorough and to be honest and to bring out the truth. And I would think that as we all raised our hand and swore an allegiance to the Constitution and to our constituents, they're watching us. It's important that the truth come out. It's important that we have a committee that puts this forward and puts this to rest. I don't want to see this drag out. I don't see that it serves the people of Wyoming well or this body well to drag this out for weeks. And we've seen salacious statements made. You know what? If they're salacious statements, I want them put to rest. So on and for, and that's why we need the committee.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? On the motion? I know there's been some qualifications now saying about what we've heard so far and maybe characterizing that, but let's stay on the motion. On the motion. Representative Rodriguez Williams on the motion to convene a special committee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and for the motion. The outcome of this motion reflects all of us serving the people of Wyoming. The matter needs to be investigated with judiciousness, urgency, and as much transparency as possible. I support the motion and hope that the body would be given the opportunity to present further questions and the need for further evidence via subpoena to properly investigate. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion on the motion. Further discussion on the motion. Further discussion on the motion. This is just like 3 times. Further discussion. So members, we are voting on the motion. And I'm just going to paraphrase it. Should the House convene a special committee to investigate the complaints concerning whether Representative Zwanitzer is qualified to continue serving in the legislature based on his residence and make recommendations to the full House on the matter? And it also had conditions about how the special committee that subjected the special committee to certain conditions, A through G. This requires a majority vote of the members of the quorum, meaning the members seated in this chamber today. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew. Baker. Banks. Bear. Blackburn. Brown. Burkhart. Burt. Clausen. Connolly. Crago. Duncan. Eklund. Air. Flitner. Fortner. Gray. Greer. Hallinan. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Jennings. Kenner. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan. LeBeau. McGuire. Nyman. Newsom. Nicholas. Oakley. Obermuller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Paxton. Provenza. Rodriguez Williams. Romero Martinez. Roscoe. Schwartz. Sherwood. Simpson. Summers. Stith. Stivar. Sweeney. Walters. Washit. Western. Wharf. Williams. Wilson. Winter. Yin. Zwanitzer. Mr. Speaker.
No.
Closing vote. Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote is closed. 24 aye, 36 no.
Members, the motion to convene a special committee with under the outline has not been adopted. Are there further motions? Are there further motions on the matter? Are there further motions on the matter? Are there further motions on the matter? Members, I consider the question of Representative Zwanitzer's qualifications to serve in the 66th House of Representatives to be resolved in and before and by the 66th Wyoming House of Representatives. We'll take a stand at ease for 10 minutes. We'll reconvene or we'll come back together at 2:35. House will please come to order. All right, members. As you know, we have some remaining bills from our introductory consent list that were pulled from the list. And I'm just going to read them off in numeric order. These bills will be eligible for individual introductions at this time. And so I'm going to read the list, and then in order, I'll ask those, whoever the first bill, second bill, third bill, if they're ready for introduction. If not, they'll be rolled forward till tomorrow, because these bills would have been on consent this morning, were pulled off. But if folks are ready to get them out of the way, we'll do that. House Bill 31, 35, 49, 52, 79, 87, 93. First bill, I'm just going to ask before we do the reading of the bill. House Bill 31, Chairman Paxton, do you want it read for introduction today? First bill for our consideration. Reading clerk, please read House Bill 31.
House Bill 31, sponsored by Education,
First
What?
reading of the bill.
Wyoming's Tomorrow Scholarship Program.
Chairman Paxton, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for introduction, House Bill 31, Wyoming Tomorrow's Scholarship Program. This is a joint education bill that's been worked on for about 2.5 years. It's an adult training bill that is funded by an endowment. We have a placeholder in there of $1,000 for now, but the endowment does not go into effect until it reaches $50 million. This is a savings and investment bill. We have a proven track record in being able to fund these endowments. For example, we have the Permanent Wyoming Mineral Trust Fund, the Common School Land Fund, Hathaway, the Wildlife Trust Fund. We know how to invest our money in our state and in our people. This is not a new concept. Other states have done the same thing, and we're one of the last. We have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to use the one-time monies for the future benefit of our state. Please take a look at the handout that's in your tray and look who's supporting this. They are industries who employ the most people in our state. They are asking for help to establish a trained workforce. This is oil and gas, mining, agriculture, contractors, manufacturers, economic development, trucking, healthcare, you name it. We've got them on as supporters of this bill. This bill has strong support from the Joint Education Committee as well as our community colleges. We feel that this is our best chance to provide new opportunities to young families that are ready for a change in careers and an opportunity to move up the ladder to a better future. I would appreciate your aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you. You had 7 seconds left, Chairman. Anybody else in opposition? Representative Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What I don't understand about this bill is it has this provision that $1,000 is going to be transferred and no scholarship shall be awarded until you reach $50 million. So where are the funds? I guess my question is, where are the funds going to come from? Is it going to come through the process? Is it going to be an unfunded thing that in the future is funded? I just think that we need to think about, because dollars are a constrained resource, right? So we need to think about what the implications are. And I don't like this unfunded aspect of this. And I do want questions of what the plan is in terms of funding this. Is there going to be a amendment to use ARPA dollars or other dollars? Because right now it's just $1,000 appropriation and a statement there that once you reach $50 million, then scholarships will be awarded. Thank you.
Thank you. 4 seconds left. Anybody like that? All right, thank you. Someone in support, 30 seconds. Majority Floor Leader Summers.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. The 50 million was a threshold we created just to generate a certain number of scholarships. So there's no magic there. And yes, it could be appropriations from anywhere over the course of time. that would eventually fund this, but you have to start somewhere. And an endowment is the place you start on and support.
Thank you very much. So members, we are voting on introduction, House Bill 31. Requires the two-thirds votes of the members. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew, Baker, Banks, Bear, Blackburn, Brown, Burkhart, Burt, Clausen, Connolly, Crago, Duncan, Eklund, Air, Flitner, Fortner, Gray, Greer, Hallinan, Haroldson, Harshman, Heiner, Henderson, Jennings, Kenner, Knapp, Larson Lloyd, Larson Dan, LeBeau, McGuire, Nyman, Newsom, Nicholas, Oakley, Obermuller, O'Hearn, Olson, Ottman, Paxton, Provenza, Rodriguez Williams, Romero Martinez, Roscoe, Schwartz, Sherwood, Simpson, Summers, Stith, Stivar, Sweeney, Walters, Washit, Western, Worf, Williams, Wilson, Winter, 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 Yen, Zwanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Closing vote. Romero Martinez. No, aye to no. Further changes? Closing vote. Vote is closed. 47 aye, 13 no.
Having received the affirmative vote of two-thirds of members, House Bill 31 is referred to Committee Number 4, Education. Next bill, it would be House Bill 35. I see that's Chairman Harshman. Do you want that considered today? All right, that's going to be passed over.
No, thank you.
I saw that. House Bill 49. Chairman Zwanitzer, that was a Corporations Committee bill. Would you like that one heard today?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, please.
All right. Reading clerk,
House Bill 49, sponsored by corporations,
first reading of the bill.
election reporting requirements.
Chairman Zwanitzer, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to present House Bill 49. I would ask for its favorable introduction. This is an interim committee bill, and it's really meant to keep up with the changing election landscape that all states are going through. And it's really a transparency and accountability bill to stop what we'd consider bad practices that are currently allowed. I think everyone's aware that negative campaigning is on the increase, both in our state and nationwide, and our laws just really aren't keeping up. So there's kind of two new types of campaigning out there. The first is called independent expenditures. They've been around a long time, but it basically is when a group can send out money on your behalf for a campaign as long as you aren't aware of them doing this. So if you have no relationship and they're just doing it to, succeed your election or defeat you in an election, a candidate, a ballot issue, et cetera, we really need to kind of tighten down the rules on that. The other thing is electioneering communications. So these are the things that get sent out by campaigns that don't specifically say vote for or against, but they make various accusations that you like or don't like or will vote or won't vote on certain things without specifically saying vote for or against a candidate. And so what you're seeing and what we're seeing really in Wyoming after our last election and what we anticipate this next election is more and more out-of-state groups coming in and putting money towards advertising in weird places without being accountable or transparent. And so what the bill is designed to do, when I have more time to explain it, we worked on it all interim in the Corporations Committee, but it's really kind of to stop bad practices and have more accountability and transparency on where the money is coming in from groups and strengthen the penalties for violating the law. Right now, we had a group in the last election cycle that said, the penalty is fine for the actions, we'll pay it. And so we don't want that. And with more and more money coming into the state for campaigns, we need to have appropriate penalties for people who break the law.
Thank you very much. Anyone speaking against? Speaking against? Seeing none on at the mic? Speaking against? No further discussion? No further discussion. So members, we're voting on introduction on House Bill 49, House Bill 49. 2/3 of the elected members. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew. Baker. Banks. Bear. Blackburn. Brown. Burkhart. Burt. Clausen. Connolly. Crago. Duncan. Eklund. Air. Flitner. Fortner. Gray. Greer. Hallinan. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Jennings. Kinner. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan. LeBeau. McGuire. Nyman. Newsom. Nicholas. Oakley. Obermuller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Paxton. Provenza. Rodriguez Williams. Romero Martinez. Roscoe. Schwartz. Sherwood. Simpson. Summers. Stith. Stivar. Sweeney. Walters. Washit. Western. Wharf. Williams. Wilson. Winter. Yen. Zwanitzer. Mr. Speaker.
Aye.
Closing vote. Are there any changes? Burt? No to aye. Further changes? Closing vote. Vote is closed. 51 aye, 9 no.
House Bill 49, having received the affirmative vote of 2/3 members, House Bill 49 is referred to committee number 7. House Bill 52, would you like that one introduced? Chairman Zwanitzer.
Yes,
Reading
Mr.
clerk.
Speaker.
House Bill 52, sponsored by corporations.
First reading of the bill.
Timeline to prepare and process absentee ballots.
Thank you. Chairman Zwanitzer, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move House Bill 52, ask for its favorable introduction. As we all know, the last 2 years have been rather trying in the state. And so what happened in our election cycle in 2020 is we, in some counties, had anywhere from a 30 to 45% increase in absentee ballots. And so as many of you are aware of the election laws, our laws don't allow for any absentee ballots to be open until 7 o'clock on election day. And they still have to be certified to the county canvassing board by that Friday. And so in 2020, our Secretary of State had to do an emergency order just to allow the county clerks in some cases, in some counties, to be able to open the absentee ballots. In some counties, it was 70% of all ballots were absentee. And so the county clerks and the Secretary of State got together and have provided this language to the Corporations Committee in the interim that if we see another event or another reason why absentees ballots that come in are extremely higher than and overwhelming for some of the county clerks organizations, that there is some flexibility and allowability based on the ramifications and the stipulations in the bill that would allow county clerks to begin processing absentee ballots early. And there's protections and restrictions. It is kind of controversial, right, to allow ballots to be opened before election day and a lot of trust. And so there is a mechanism and on multiple layers of security to ensure the secrecy of the ballot. But really, our county clerks came to us and said the last election was overwhelming and just the sheer number of absentees. And if not for the Secretary of State's emergency order, many of our counties would have had problems. So putting a process in statute is better in the future than the Secretary of State having to do an emergency order to allow counting of absentees. And I would appreciate your support. And so would your county clerks.
Thank you very much. Anyone want to speak against it? Speaking against it? Representative Gray, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I really would like to urge the body to vote no on this one. the decline in confidence in our elections, we really need to think about this. Important in our republic to maintain that confidence. We talked about it last year in the voter ID bill. And I'm very concerned the implications on this one. Start opening ballots ahead, changing the procedure. It was one thing in the COVID year, but the reality is that the Secretary of State, the way that they handle the absentee is going to revert back to the pre-COVID time. So I think we're going to go back to that level of volume. And I appreciate what the chairman of the corporation said too. I mean, I think they got that in the testimony, watching the committee, and I think we should just continue to monitor this, but for now vote it down because there's a lot of questions about our elections, and I'm afraid this is just going to up the ante. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're 56 seconds. Anyone else want to speak for the bill? For the bill, Chairman Zwanzer, seeing none. Vice Chairman Duncan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I speak on and for this amendment of this bill. This, there's a ton of protocol. There's audits. There's actually felony language. There's all kinds of fail safes in our statutes already for people who disclose, people who say anything or do anything to tell anyone about who is ahead or says anything about these ballots. So it's very secure. It's necessary and needed for
Thank
the
you.
secretaries or the clerks.
Thank you. So members, we're voting on House Bill 52 for introduction, 2/3 vote. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew. Baker. Banks. Bear. Blackburn. Brown. Burkhart. Burt. Clausen. Connolly. Crago. Duncan. Eklund. Air. Flitner. Fortner. Gray. Greer. Hallinan. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Jennings. Kenner. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan. LeBeau. McGuire. Nyman. Newsom. Nicholas. Oakley. Obermuller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Paxton. Provenza. Rodriguez Williams. Romero Martinez. Roscoe. Schwartz. Sherwood. Simpson. Summers. Stith. Stivar. Sweeney. Walters. Washit. Western. Worf. Worf. Williams. Wilson. Winter. Yin. Zwanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Worf. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 41 aye, 18 no, 1 excused.
Having received the affirmative vote of 2/3 of members, House Bill 52 has been introduced and is referred to Committee Number 7, Corporations. Next bill is House Bill 79. Chairman Nicholas, do you want that heard today?
Yes,
All right, reading clerk,
House Bill 79, sponsored by Appropriations,
first reading of the bill.
Employment Support Fund Amendments.
Chairman Nicholas, please proceed.
thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, House Bill 79 was brought to us by the Department of Workforce Services. Basically, this is a corrective bill to allow the funds not to revert that go into the Employment Support Fund. These funds are used to operate the 20 workforce services offices around the state. It's an accounting kind of a nightmare for them. And so really all we're doing is say you don't have to revert the de minimis dollars. Their annual budget's about 2.6 million. but there's a small amount of it they have to revert back at the end of the biennium. And so it really doesn't make any sense because the dollars just go into the general fund and then we reappropriate it out. So this just simplifies the process for the agency. And so it was brought at their request. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody speaking against? Speaking against? Speaking against? Thank you. No further discussion. We're voting on introduction. House Bill 79, 2/3 members. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew. Baker. Banks. Bear. Blackburn. Brown. Burkhart. Burt. Clausen. Connolly. Crago. Duncan. Eklund. Air. Flitner. Fortner. Gray. Greer. Hallinan. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Jennings. Kenner. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan. LeBeau. McGuire. Nyman. Newsom. Nicholas. Oakley. Obermuller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Paxton. Provenza. Rodriguez Williams. Romero Martinez. Roscoe. Schwartz. Sherwood. Simpson. Summers. Stith. Stivar. Sweeney. Walters. Washit. Western. Wharf. Williams. Wilson. Winter. Yin. Zwanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Burt, no to aye. Further changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 44 aye, 16 no.
House Bill 79, having received a 2/3 vote for introduction, is introduced and referred to Committee Number 2, Appropriations. Chairman Olson, do you want 87 introduced? Reading clerk?
House Bill 87, sponsored by Blockchain.
First reading of the bill.
Insurance investment amendments.
Chairman Olson, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move House Bill 0087 and ask for your favorable consideration. This is a bill that your Special Select Committee on Digital Innovations and Financial Technology worked on over the interim. Essentially, what this is reinsurance. Allows for a reinsurance market in Wyoming. The thing that I really like about the bill is that it requires the entity be domiciled here. That's really the intent, is that they're here. They fall under our department that regulates insurance. You know, we worked with the department as we developed this legislation, and at the end of the day, the language that we have in this bill really came strongly through our department to work within our existing laws. Reinsurance is I guess, fairly simple. It's really the process of selling and buying portions of your company's risk portfolios. Keys here are the insurers are legally required always to maintain sufficient resources to pay all potential claims from issued policies. And again, the crux of this bill is that we're going to require that these companies domicile here. So this is just part of the diversification portfolio of bringing new and attractive businesses to Wyoming. We were approached by members of the industry from all over the world who have an interest in engaging in business in Wyoming. And we're creating an atmosphere that they can do that under the regulation of our department that regulates insurance under their supervision and approval. And that's really it, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Speaking in opposition, Representative Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to urge a no vote on this bill. Got a little nervous looking at the language on this bill, started asking some questions and hearing that there's some businesses domiciled in the Cayman Islands that want to come to Wyoming. And I guess my response to that is this should really go through the corporations committee. And I'm concerned about the growth of the blockchain committee. It's getting outside of blockchain and technology and moving into other things. And I know there's apparently a blockchain nexus that reinsurance wants to go into blockchain, but I just think this should go through corporations. With all due respect to the chairman, reinsurance, keep in mind, was one of the causes. I mean, ultimately government was the huge cause, but was one of the causes of the 2008 financial crisis, collateral debt obligations. I think we need to have this go through a process. And I don't think the blockchain committee is the right committee for this. So let's bring this
Thank you.
through in the next interim.
Thank you.
And thank you.
Anyone want to respond? 30 seconds. Chairman Olson.
In 30 seconds, Mr. Speaker, I suppose this bill could be assigned to corporations. But at the end of the day, this is a free market bill. We have industry folks that want to bring business to Wyoming. This bill invites that in under a regulatory atmosphere. Promoting a portfolio that's business friendly, it separates the good guys from the bad guys, whether that's the Cayman Islands or wherever they're at. We're attracting the good guys. That's why they have to be domiciled here, and they fall under the regulation of our department that regulates insurance. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. All right, members are voting on introduction, House Bill 87, 2/3 vote. Chief Clerk.
Andrew, Baker, Banks, Bear, Blackburn, Brown, Burkhart, Burt, Clausen, Connolly, Crago, Duncan, Eklund, Air, Flitner, Fortner, Gray, Greer, Hallinan, Haroldson, Harshman, Heiner, Henderson, Jennings, Kenner, Knapp, Larson Lloyd, Larson Dan, LeBeau, McGuire, Nyman, Newsom, Nicholas, Oakley, Obermuller, O'Hearn, Olson, Ottman, Paxton, Provenza, Rodriguez Williams, Romero Martinez, Roscoe, Schwartz, Sherwood, Simpson, Summers, Stith, Stivar, Sweeney, Walters, Washit, Western, Wharf, Williams, Wilson, Winter, Yin, Zwanitzer. Mr. Speaker.
Aye.
Closing vote. Are there any changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 41 aye, 19 no.
House Bill 87, have received the 2/3 vote. House Bill 87 is introduced and referred to Committee Number 7, Corporations. Chairman Flitner, do you want to take up House Bill 93?
Mr. Speaker, we're ready.
All right. Reading Clerk, House Bill 93.
House Bill 93, sponsored by Travel.
First reading of the bill.
Wyoming Film Production Incentives Program.
Chairman Flitner, please proceed.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. Good representatives, I move House Bill number 3 and ask for your favorable consideration, the Wyoming Film Production Incentives Program. And for an explanation of the bill, I will pass it on to the good representative from the Sweetwater country.
Representative Banks, please proceed.
Mr. Speaker, what do Yellowstone, 1883, the CJ Box Series, Joe Pickett, and Longmire have in common? They're all major film productions filmed in other states or countries pretending to be in Wyoming because we don't have a film incentive program in place. The film production incentive is a result of Wyoming Industry Task Force exploring economic development opportunities here in Wyoming. Currently, the production company would have to spend a minimum of $200,000 to qualify. When film or ad companies work in Wyoming, the production company contributes significantly to the local economy through local crew hires, rentals, and purchases. We had this law on the books in 2009 to 2019, and it was sunsetted. During that time, 2.1 million was distributed rebate among 41 individual projects. Total Wyoming expenditures during that time equated to $18.3 million, creating 319 local crew hires, $9.1 million in wages for local Wyoming workers. Throughout the interim, we heard testimony that the very thing film producers ask when considering a destination to shoot here in Wyoming is if there's not a film incentive program, they simply won't look here. They'll go elsewhere. And that impacts our economy, it impacts travel, and it impacts our local communities. This bill will help provide economic benefit to the communities that films are shot in. Crews stay in Wyoming hotels, they eat in Wyoming restaurants, they hire Wyoming residents, and they spend dollars on Wyoming main streets. Only qualified expenditures for goods or services from a vendor, supplier, or are reimbursed.
Thank you. So members, just a reminder, we don't use names of organizations or commercial entities or commercial products at the mic. So let's that's not the end of the world, but let's be cautious. So now folks who speak in opposition, I see Representative Hallinan, 1 minute.
Thank you,
Please
Mr.
proceed.
Speaker. I rise to oppose this bill. I urge your no vote on it. The money that is into this, $3 million is put into this program, and that comes out of the Tourism Board. The Tourism Board was sold to us as a way to fund the local tourism businesses. And this money is going to be going to support these major filmmakers. The amount of money that they have available to them for their business dwarfs the amount of money that we can put into that. And I urge your vote no on this bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Anyone against? Anyone in opposition? You got 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I won't bring up the constitutional issue. I won't bring up the morality issue. Just vote no on this.
3 seconds left. All right, we have 30-second response. Representative Banks, did you want to use that time? Please proceed.
The fiscal note attached to the bill would come entirely from the Tourism Reserve and Special Projects account, with zero funds coming from the general fund.
Thank you, Representative. So members, we're voting on introduction, House Bill 93, 2/3 vote. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew. Baker. Banks. Bear. Blackburn. Brown. Burkhart. Burt. Clausen. Connolly. Crago. Duncan. Eklund. Air. Flitner. Fortner. Gray. Greer. Hallinan. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Jennings. Kenner. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan. LeBeau. McGuire. Nyman. Newsom. Nicholas. Oakley. Obermuller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Paxton. Provenza. Rodriguez Williams. Romero Martinez. Roscoe. Schwartz. Sherwood. Simpson. Summers. Stith. Stivar. Sweeney. Walters. Washit. Western. Worf. Williams. Wilson. Winter. Yin. Zawanitzer. Mr. Speaker.
Aye.
Closing vote. Are there any changes? Brown, no to aye. Further changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 32 aye, 28 no.
House Bill 93, having not received the affirmative vote of 2/3 of members, House Bill 93 is postponed indefinitely. General committee reports. Standing committee reports. So members, just while the chief clerk and the reading clerk are getting ready there, tomorrow we'll continue on introductions. And there is a chance we'll look at the list. I'll look at the list. We may get to some individual bill introductions tomorrow. So those of you that have multiple bills, give me your priorities. Those of you who had no bills at all, thank you. Reading clerk, standing committee reports.
House Bill 22, sponsored by Revenue, Industrial Revenue Bonds, Pilot Payments. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 3 Revenue, to whom was referred House Bill 22, Industrial Revenue Bonds, Pilot Payments, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation to do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Baker, Hallinan, Harshman, Henderson, Roscoe, Sweeney, Yin. Noes, Representatives Gray and Jennings. Representative Harshman, Chairman. House Bill 7, sponsored by Transportation, Commercial Vehicle Driving Disqualification. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 8, Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs, to whom is referred House Bill 7, Commercial Vehicle Driving Disqualification, respectful report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Baker, Brown, Burkhart, Burt, Henderson, McGuire, Obermueller, O'Hearn, Stybar. Representative Burkhart, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Members, a reminder, it's called the second reminder, but it maybe it's part of our rules. House Rule 13.2. If you have a bill draft in LSO, it needs to be approved for, I gotta make sure I read this. It's got to be approved by the sponsor and returned to LSO by noon on Wednesday, February 16th, the third day of the session. So approve your bills. You can do that, of course, online, or you can do so. And I know some of the LSO staff is chasing down members to get approvals or find out what you're doing with your bills. So please remember tomorrow by noon for approval of bills. Mr. Majority Floor Leader, privilege of the floor.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. So I'm going to give you the committee of the whole list. So I emailed that out, but I'm going to give it, and then there's one more added. So the committee of the whole list will be House Bill 42, 59, 78, 21, 22, and 7. And Mr. Speaker, I move that the House resolve itself into committee of the whole.
You've heard the motion of the Majority Floor Leader. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, no. Representative Wester. You have a list for him? What is the list?
All right, that's enough. We will stand at ease for just a few moments. Committee whole will please come to order. The first bill for our consideration is House Bill 42. The reading clerk will please. Oh, check that. First bill for our consideration is House Bill 42. The reading clerk will please read the bill.
House Bill 42, sponsored by Appropriations, Local Government Distributions. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 2 Appropriations, to whom was referred House Bill 42, Local Government Distributions. Respectful report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Kinner, Larson Lloyd, Nicholas, Schwartz, Simpson, Stith, Walters. Representative Nicholas, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you. I move when the committee of the whole rise and report, it does so with a recommendation that House Bill 42 do pass. And I'll turn the explanation over to the good representative from the western part of the state.
Representative Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Folks, so we're on House Bill 42, and it's titled Local Government Distributions. Let's talk just for a minute about what this local government distribution thing is, so you have this little background. It began in 2005 when us as a legislature decided to start taking away some funding sources that were given to our towns, cities, and counties. And it's changed over time. As we took away money, we felt that we needed to restore it. And so we started adding to this. And so now the bill in front of you is $105 million, and that's for a biennium. But let me give you an example of how this has come to play. In 2006, many of you remember, it was a good year and we had plenty of money. And so the legislature made a decision to remove sales and use tax on food. Do you remember that? And so, but bear in mind, the food sales taxes went to the cities, towns, and counties, not to the legislature. It didn't come back to the general fund. And so we removed a tax and we added $46 million to this direct distribution in lieu of that. It was our decision, so we made the towns and cities and counties whole. And that's how this is massaged over time. A couple of years later, there was $20 million again added to it for money that we took away from revenue that they were traditionally receiving. So that's our background. So it's changed over time. I refer you to the bill, page 1. The money comes from our general fund, and it's $105 million. That's a biennium, so it's half that much for each year. And then it's distributed as follows. So then you will go through page after page of a complicated formula associated with towns, cities, and counties. This formula is named after a former member of our body that put this together that seemed to be reasonably fair. And as you scan down through that, we're not going to go through the formula today. And as you drop down to the last page, on page 14, line 4, you'll read, is the intent of the legislature that the funds distributed under this section shall not be used for salary adjustments, additional personnel, or increased personnel benefits. That's just a little warning to our towns, cities, and counties to suggest that this is a bill that comes before us every 2 years. And at our pleasure, we can change the number or completely stop the distributions altogether. So it's a little warning. Don't plan on this. Don't put it in an area that you rely on it every year. But it is just an intention and not a direction. So you can glance over at the fiscal report and take a minute and look over the towns and the cities and the counties that fall into your jurisdiction. You can see where the amount is. So if this bill is approved, this money will be distributed to the Office of State Lands and Investments, and they will disperse it according to that formula. Mr. Chairman, I urge an aye vote on the bill.
Any discussion? Majority Floor Leader Summers.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. So I do have a question. First of all, I say I support the bill, but I do have a question. So there's been 2 different formulas that we've used. And the original formula brought by the chairman in this house kind of crafted it one way. And then a formula was created by another member on the other side in the Senate that was, I would just say, more favorable to small towns in Wyoming than the original formula. And so my question to the good bringer of the bill is, because that was the last formula we used. So the last formula we used was the one that was more, I guess, favorable to small towns. So the question I have to the bringer of the bill is why the change or why the decision, why did you make your decision one way or the other on the formula that you decided to use?
Representative Nicholas? Excuse me, Representative Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The decision for the formula follows the same distribution that we used for the last biennium.
Any further discussion? Majority Floor Leader Summers.
So, Mr. Chairman, I would just like appropriations to go back over the, so we understand, and then maybe a next reading, whether this is the original formula or the formula we used last time. So if it is, that's fine. I got two different versions out of the good committee. So I'd like to know which one it is. Thank you.
Chairman Nicholas.
So for the good majority floor leader, I don't know the answer to that question, but I'll find out. So I believe it's what we had last year, which basically increased the formula for the small municipalities, but we did not discuss it in appropriations.
Any further discussion?
Question.
Question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Nicholas's motion when the committee of the whole rise to report that House Bill 42 do pass, say aye. All those against, say no. The ayes have it. House Bill 42 has passed committee of the whole. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 59. Will the reading clerk please read the bill?
House Bill 59, sponsored by Appropriations, Workers' Compensation, COVID-19. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 2 appropriations, to whom was referred House Bill 59, Workers' Compensation, COVID-19. Respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Kinner, Larson Lloyd, Nicholas, Schwartz, Simpson, Stith, Walters. Representative Nicholas, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Vice Chair Larson?
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, has it been introduced?
Yes, it has.
Okay, so here we go.
Turn that hearing it up.
So folks, I need to take you back on to a couple of years ago when we had our COVID special session in 2020. And we developed House Bill Senate File 2. And in that, as part of that special session, we said that if somebody, and I'll read this to you, for the period beginning January 1, 2020 through December 2020, a COVID caused by any COVID shall be considered an injury for the purpose of this act by the nature of all employment which the coverage is provided by this act. And so it means that it could be compensated through workers' comp and assumed that you contracted it at work. Then because of our concern to the employers, because there's really no indication that it was contracted at work, we wanted to hold them harmless.
Vice Chair Larson, real quick, could you actually move that bill real quick, please?
I'm glad to move. That's what I thought I asked you, Mr. Chairman, as if the bill had been moved. Mr. Speaker, I move that House Bill 59.
Mr. Chairman, I move in the Penny Verizon report. It does so with the recommendation that House Bill 59 do pass, and I'll turn the explanation of the bill over to the good representative from Fremont County.
Vice Chair Larson.
Yeah. Any WD-40 that we can get rid of the rust here, Mr. Chairman? Thank you. So will continue on. So we would saying that if you contracted COVID, that you could be compensated through workers' comp. But then we said, then we also put a provision in there to protect businesses that said that no injury related to COVID would impact their employer's experience rating. Remember that? And so it allowed for compensation, but then protected the employers. Last year in Senate File 19, we extended that period that you could make workers' compensation claims for another year through the end of 21 or through the end of 22. But what we failed to do was to protect the employers so that if there was claims based on COVID against their workers' comp, it was then going to impact their experience rating. And so what we're doing here in this bill today is we're going back and correcting that. And if you look at the bill on page 1, it says no compensatable injury related that occurs during the period between January 1, 2020 and ending March 31st, 22 through and for which a claim can be filed on or before March 31st, 23. So that allows all of the process for claims to be filed in workers' comp can impact an employer's experience rating. And so that's the extent of the bill, and would encourage your support to correct that little mistake that we made last year.
Any further discussion? Representative Yen.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. So I do have a question. Is the idea that we would extend this if necessary? I mean, theoretically, fingers crossed, we won't need it for any further amount of time. But if for some reason we do, is this something that you think that might need to be taken up again next year?
Vice Chair Larson.
So, Mr. Chairman, that was considered, and it was not extended through this year and was kind of closed out.
Any further discussion? Question being called. All those in favor when the committee or all those in favor when the committee of the whole rise to report, do so with a recommendation that House Bill 59 do pass. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. I think the ayes have it. House Bill 59 has passed the committee of the whole. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 78. Will the reading clerk please read the bill?
House Bill 78, sponsored by Appropriations, bid rejection or denial for public works contracting. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 2, Appropriations, to whom was referred House Bill 78, bid rejection or denial for public works contracting. Respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Kinner, Larson Lloyd, Nicholas, Schwartz, Simpson, Stith, Walters. Representative Nicholas, Chairman.
Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move when the committee of the whole rise and report it does so with the recommendation that House Bill 78 do pass. And I'll turn the explanation over to where the gentleman, where the rocks are green.
Representative Stith.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Members, I'd ask for your favorable consideration for House Bill 78. This applies to bidders on public works contracts. If there's a pre-qualification process that's being used, the current system is that the local governmental entity can just send you a letter telling you that you're not qualified and you're not allowed to bid on the public works project. What this bill does is to say that when the local governmental entity does that, that they have to give you an explanation of why they disqualified you. So the heart of the bill is on page 5, lines 13 through 22, which would read, a public entity that rejects a bid or response for a public works contract or denies a bidder or respond at the opportunity to submit a bid or respond to a solicitation for a public works contract shall within 10 business days
of the rejection or denial, provide the bidder or respondent a written response describing the reasons for the rejection or denial. So that's all the bill requires the local governmental entity to do. And the idea is that if you are disqualified from bidding on a project, you may be unhappy about that, right? Now, under the current system, you may have no idea why you were disqualified. At least now you would have an explanation, and then that would help you for not that particular contract, but for on the next round, it would give you an opportunity to cure that. So this is a small step forward. And so I'd encourage an aye vote. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Thank you. Question having been called.
Excuse me.
Oh, Representative Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The explanation seems simple enough, but I am just kind of curious. So if I get the notification that tells me, well, you were just more expensive than the other guy, that doesn't really help solve the issue with what it was. So I guess what ultimate problem are we trying to solve with this piece of legislation? It sounded like we're able to find out what we did wrong in a bid, but if that bid was just everything else apples to apples and we just come in and it's just a hair bit lower, I'm going to get a statement that says you were just too high. So what exactly are we trying to fix?
Representative Stith.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Great question. The real purpose of it is on line 14 on lines 14 and 15, where it says denies a bidder or respondent the opportunity to submit a bid. That's where it really has a bite, because if it's in the pre-qualification stage, there hasn't been a bid yet. You've just been denied the opportunity to even submit a bid. But you're absolutely right. If you were the high bidder, right, you don't really need an explanation of why you got rejected. I certainly agree with that. And if to the extent this bill does anything other than deal with the pre-qualification issue, we may tweak the language, but that's the thrust of it.
Representative Larson Lloyd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to the good speaker who trains dogs or cares for them, and I hope they bite him. It's important. It's not a matter, the rejection of the bid is not that you didn't win the bid. It's in the process of the bidding. If a bid was submitted and it was rejected, for example, you didn't address an addendum in the bid, or you had an anomaly in the bid that was missing, that bid would be rejected, and then they would have to explain to you why it was rejected. If you didn't win the bid, that your desk mate won the bid, they don't have to explain to you that he was higher or lower or anything. That's just part of the bidding process. But if your bid was not accepted to be evaluated in the end, in the bid opening, there is a rejection because something is wrong. That's when they're required to give you an explanation. And that has not been happening.
Majority Floor Leader Summers.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. So my question is, oftentimes in a small community, there might be one good truck contractor, right? A local guy, but there could be bids come in from way out of town that are lower, right? So my question is this going to preclude local governments from choosing local businesses to kind of do their work if they choose to do their work? And so I'm just trying to figure out if we're going to impact some of those things.
Vice Chairman Larson.
Thank you. And again, I think it's really important to understand that in the bidding process, we want as many bidders as we can get. Residency applies, all of those things applies. And when I receive the bids, these other 59 bids that have come into me from each of you, I have to look at those bids and see if they meet the qualifications to be accepted. Doesn't mean that I've looked at the bottom line or anything, but if do they meet all of the required criteria to bid on this project? And if yours doesn't, I will reject it. And I have to send you an explanation why, because you forgot to put the total of your bid, whatever that case may be. But if everybody here submitted a bid that qualified and we awarded the bid to my good friend here, that does not require me, then I haven't rejected any bids. We've just awarded the bid to him. So that's, I hope that you understand that that's not where it happens. It's if the bid has missed something that we have to reject it because it was deficient in some manner.
Any further discussion? Question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Nicholas's motion, though, when the committee of the whole rise to report, to do so with the recommendation that House Bill 78 do pass. All those in favor, say aye. All those opposed, say no. The ayes have it. House Bill 78 has passed the committee of the whole. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 21. Will the reading clerk please read the bill?
House Bill 21, sponsored by Revenue, repealing exemption for one-way pagers. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 3, Revenue, to whom was referred House Bill 21, repealing exemption for one-way pagers, respectfully reports same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes. Representatives Baker, Hallinan, Harshman, Henderson, Jennings, Roscoe, Sweeney, Yin. Noes, Representative Gray. Representative Harshman, Chairman.
Vice Chair Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I move House Bill 21 and ask for your favorable consideration. It's a committee-sponsored bill, and fundamentally, it's a bill. We're cleaning up the statutes, really looking at the exemptions, as we all know. And this is one that there's just not a lot of folks with these types of pagers anymore. So I'd ask for your favorable consideration. Stand by for questions.
Vice Chair Henderson, you never actually moved the bill. Could you move that for me real quick?
I thought I did that when I said I moved House Bill 21, sir.
Thank you.
Oh, here? Sorry. Here, I'll read the script.
Thank you. Stick to the script, folks.
Thank you. I move that when the committee of the whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that bill number 21 do pass. And I think I've given an explanation. If there are no questions, I call for the question.
Well, hang on there real quick, Mr. Vice Chair. Representative Eklund.
So I just need a little clarification. A group of people that I believe use these pagers are the volunteer firemen, at least that group. Are they tax exempt because they're a pseudo government? Or do they then have to start paying taxes on their one-way pagers that were supposed to be covered by WyoLink, I think?
Vice Chair Henderson.
Are there any other questions?
Representative Hallinan.
Okay. I'll try to respond to that, Mr. Chairman.
Vice Chair Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So my understanding is, like I said, this is an exemption that's been in place for some time. And frankly, there's not many people using these. And well, there may be some. Obviously, removing the exemption is going to impose the tax for those that use these pagers. And I'm not aware of any statute that, like what you're referring to, that requires the state of Wyoming to pay for it. So we could certainly discuss that after it's introduced in committee. I mean, as we go to the next reading. Sorry.
Any further discussion? Question having been called. All those in favor of Chairman Harshman's motion, and when the committee of the whole rise to the report, do so with a recommendation that House Bill 21 do pass. All those in favor, say aye. All those opposed, say no. House Bill 21 has passed committee of the whole. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 22. The reading clerk will please read the bill.
House Bill 22, sponsored by Revenue, Industrial Revenue Bonds, Pilot Payments. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 3, Revenue, to whom was referred House Bill 22, Industrial Revenue Bonds, Pilot Payments, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Ayes. Representatives Baker, Hallinan, Harshman, Henderson, Roscoe, Sweeney, Yin. Noes, Representatives Gray and Jennings. Representative Harshman, Chairman.
Chairman Harshman. Vice Chair Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the committee of the whole arises to report it, do so with the recommendation that bill number 21 do pass. And for the explanation, I'll turn it over to my friend from the beautiful county to the northwest.
Representative Yin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I present to you House Bill 22, Industrial Revenue Bonds Pilot Payments. So colleagues, this is a program that we already had in place. It's Title 15, Chapter 1, Article 7. It's these vehicles called industrial revenue bonds. They're meant as economic development incentives to bring businesses to these communities. And so one of our tasks during the interim was just to take an overview of this program, see what has been done, what hasn't been done, why it has or has not been working. And basically, we've had one project within the last 10 years. And so the goal of the committee, the committee decided, okay, so why isn't this working? Let's look at other states, what they do with these internal revenue bonds and where they have worked. And so one of the places that they've worked is Kansas. And so I did send the memo to all of our colleagues. And so this bill, all it does is allow for a city or town to basically use this internal revenue bond as a tax abatement. So they'll finance this bond themselves. A company would finance this bond themselves, and they put this pot of money in, and it kind of just sits there, and they pay, they get a tax abatement, and they do this payment in lieu of taxes. And in the current program, I believe it does a full payment in lieu of taxes. This allows them to abate it to about 50%. And this creates an economic development incentive to help bring some of these businesses around and use this vehicle in some of the places that it hasn't been used before. So I do ask for your aye vote.
Representative Yin, would you please, Representative Yin, would you please move Standing Committee Amendment number 1?
Mr. Chairman, I will move Standing Committee Amendment number 1, and I will give that explanation to the good representative in the other microphone. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman,
Representative Jennings.
Mr. Chairman, I'd move Standing Committee number 1 to House Bill 22 and ask for your favorable consideration. So members, there were a couple of no's on this, and I won't bring up who it was. And on this particular bill, I felt like that one time in the last 10 years had this been used. And so that's what the bill is addressing. But it's been around, it had been put at the 100%. About 1969, I believe, was what was brought up in committee. And so I felt like that was an awful long time, and there hadn't been much motion on this particular bill. And so we moved the section here of the 50% to be repealed on July 1st, 2032. So I tried to do my due diligence and make it a better bill by at least forcing it to come back before this body. So that'd be the amendment.
Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor of House Standing Committee Amendment number 1 to House Bill 22, say aye. All those opposed, say no. That amendment has been adopted. We are back on the bill. Vice Chair Henderson.
I really, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really don't have anything more to add, except that you can't get a better advocate for an issue and a look at it if everybody involved doesn't look at it. And so we have a lot of things in our state that are on the books that aren't being used. And I think what the committee has done with the help of my good friend in terms of the sunset is a step in the right direction. So I think it's worth looking at. I know that the good chairman may have a couple of comments here, so I'll just leave it at that for now.
Real quick, members, let's give our good minerals chair a welcome, and at the count of 3, let's give him a grr. 1, 2, 3, grr. Chairman Greer.
Mr. Chairman. So for the committee, I have a couple questions regarding why this bill's in front of us. And, so these aren't used very often. And so I assume you had people who come in and talk and say some of the fundamental defects in utilizing this program. And so I'd like to know if you did, and that if this particular fix was something that would help. So reducing the amount of the reimbursement, I guess, confuses me. Second of all, is that, one of the concerns that we have is that then these are our private business bonds. And so in the current interest rate market or bond market right now, what are you seeing for demand for those from industry? If we're attracting new businesses in, so hopefully somebody's writing down my questions, or I can stop and wait for them to be answered one at a time. And so if we're trying to do economic development, we're usually doing businesses that don't have the best financial sheets, right? So they're not able to get the bonding to begin with. And so without being able to back those, I'm just wondering, why do we continue a program that my fundamental understanding is doesn't work? So just a question. Multiple questions.
Vice Chair Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And my good friend, the good chairman of Minerals, has done an excellent job of opposing and I think in some cases providing information to help responding to his question. Fundamentally, I think this provides a tool for economic development. And that was the substance of the testimony offered in committee this morning. It was the Economic Development Agency that's used across Wyoming and has many members in the agency. So they didn't come up and say anything more really than they support the bill. And then we went ahead and had the committee amendment that we've already considered. So it's there. I recommend that we keep it on the books and take a look at it again. That's the reason that we put the sunset on there, really to help us, based on the good input from my friend, to put the sunset there to help take another look at it. So thank you.
Chairman Harshman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the good chairman of Minerals, I think, again, we're trying to take another long-term look at this. Market conditions here recently this has not been a big demand on this, but I think times are changing a little bit. And I think as we roll through this, I think it's going to be could be potentially important. And this isn't state money or a big risk to the state or anything else. Again, just another tool, but other states, and I think I can say states on the floor, but other states are really using this successfully. And I know Wyoming is a little different, but I think times are changing and there'd be no harm in passing this bill. Right now, what we got, nobody's ever going to use. Might as well take it out of the statute. And so we're trying to kind of get this thing and just add another arrow in the quiver. And it's no risk to the state. If it doesn't get used, it's no different than the current program that's never going to get used. And so again, just trying to invigorate it. So appreciate your support. Thank you.
Representative Stith.
Mr. Chairman, again, I have, I think, similar questions, and for either the bringers of the bill or others to answer. It looks to me like the issuer of the bond is actually a governmental entity of some kind. And I guess I just wanted someone to explain where the money goes, how it gets spent, what's the revenue source to pay it back. I understand the purpose of what this bill does, is it reduces the property tax for the bond term, which sounds like it could be for a long time, because the bond term, if they're 10-year bonds, it's 10 years. If they're 20-year bonds, it's 20 years of reduced taxes. So I get the incentive piece of it. I'm just confused about who's actually issuing the bonds, where the money's going, who gets it, and how it gets paid back. That's fine.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Question being called. Thank you. Question be called that when Chairman Harshman's motion, when the committee of the whole rise to report, it do so with the recommendation that House Bill 22 do pass. All those in favor, say aye. All those opposed, say no. That bill has passed committee of the whole. Excuse me, House Bill 22 has passed committee of the whole. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 7. Will the reading clerk please read the bill?
House Bill 7, sponsored by Transportation, Commercial Vehicle Driving Disqualification. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 8, Transportation, Highways and Military Affairs, to whom was referred House Bill 7, Commercial Vehicle Driving Disqualification. Respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes. Representatives Baker, Brown, Burkhart, Burt, Henderson, McGuire, Obermueller, O'Hearn, Stivar. Representative Burkhart, Chairman.
Chairman Burkhart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the committee of the whole rise to report, it do so with recommendation that House Bill 7 do pass. And I further, while there are no standing committee amendments, and I turn the explanation over to the good representative from the center of the state.
Representative O'Hearn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I ask for your favorable consideration for House Bill 0007. What this bill does, it amends Wyoming State Statute 317305, the disqualification and cancellation and right to hearing. The issue that it addresses is certain driving and criminal offenses for CDL operators have mandatory penalties, including lifetime bans of commercial driving privileges. What this bill does is aligns the department with federal requirements. It adds using a commercial motor vehicle in the commission of human trafficking, which we passed last session, as described in Wyoming State Statute 62, 702, and 703 to the offenses that lead to a lifetime ban. And it also maintains alignment with federal requirements so that Wyoming can continue to issue CDLs to our residents for commercial driving purposes. On page 2 is the main portion of it. On line 3, any person who's disqualified for life has been reduced under this subsection and who is subsequently convicted of another disqualifying offense under subsection C of this section shall not be again eligible for reduction under this subsection. And then in line 12, we changed may to shall. And in line 21, we added the human trafficking. The Trafficking Association is behind this legislation for their continued livelihood. I ask for your favorable consideration. Stand for questions.
Any discussion? Chairman Greer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So on introduction, I voted no, and then a few people asked me if I was in favor of human trafficking. I am not. The reason I voted no is I read this, didn't have a chance to study it, but I think it can be fixed. I have a question when I read the federal code associated with this. So there's a list of things and they're listed out in the statute, okay? So to lose your license for life, you have to have 2 of these major violations, right? So then you can go back in and get reinstated, but you have to wait 10 years to be able to get reinstated. I think I understand that correctly. Okay, so my concern is with the new language saying, Dan, if you're convicted of another disqualifying offense under subsection C, which subsection C says a person may be disqualified for life if convicted of 2 or more violations of any of the offenses listed back in subsection A. And then we drop down to what I understand to be very important provisions in the statute, which deal with a suspension for life for trafficking in drugs, and then the addition for human trafficking. And so I guess my question is it then on line 6 on page 2, is it the intent should be, and I asked this, should that, instead of being C, should that be E? Or is our intent that if you're convicted under E, you cannot ever be reinstated? And if it is regarding subsection C, then you have to get 2 more violations of those that are listed in A. So you can see how that's confusing, in where I could have a wonderful time representing somebody on this.
From my understanding, Mr. Chairman,
Representative O'Hearn.
Mr. Chairman, from my understanding, you get one offense for drugs, you wait your 10 years, you can be reinstated, but once you're fined again for trafficking or committing a felony of transporting drugs, you're no longer allowed to drive a commercial vehicle. And if you're a one-time offender of human trafficking, then you use your lifetime privileges. So Chairman Burkhart, do you know if we need to change that to an E or a C or a B or a D?
Representative Hearn, let's avoid using proper names.
Oh, sorry about that.
It's okay. Chairman Burkhart.
I think that's referred to as a lifeline in an old TV game show. I don't know that we need to renumber the paragraphs. On page 2, the change to adding using a motor vehicle was merely a cleanup. That was that. So I think that was the question.
Any further discussion? Chairman Greer.
Well, Mr. Chairman, we're on committee of the whole, so the idea of committee of the whole is to understand the bill, make sure we get a good bill for people of the state of Wyoming, right? So that's what I want to do. And so I guess that was a question. What was the committee's intent? If the committee's intent was you can't have reinstatement, it is what the good presenter of the bill said. Because the code allows you for reinstatement, and our statute allows for reinstatement for a lifetime ban. Okay. And there's a whole list of reasons why you get a lifetime ban. So if our intent is if you're convicted of human trafficking, you don't get to be reinstated, we need to make sure that that's crystal clear. If the intent then is with respect to and to have it mirror up with the federal code and not be more punitive than the federal code upon where it starts on line 3. Okay, so you've been suspended for life, you've been reinstated after 10 years. We need to make that, do we clearly understand what we're saying there? Because what we're saying is if you're convicted of another disqualifying offense under subsection C, well, subsection C doesn't have the qualifying offenses. What it says is if you've been convicted of 2 of the qualifying offenses up in subsection A, then you are suspended for life. So I'd like to know what the committee's intent is, and maybe we could get this cleared up with an amendment. That's all I'm asking.
Chairman Burkhart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the committee's intent really is to match and meet the requirements of federal Department of Transportation requirements. That's the basis to this, that if you're convicted of a second offense of human trafficking, you are disqualified for life with no chance of reinstatement. The Wyoming Department of Transportation the highway people have gotten a letter from the federal group that says you have to match our statutes effective, I think it's September of this year. And that's the intent, is to bring state requirements in line with federal requirements so that we do not jeopardize our ability to process and give CDL license and to keep maintaining what we get in federal funds. I think there would be a reduction of close to $22 million a year. Now, don't misunderstand me. I dislike the federal, what I call extortion in these matters. But I think we need to do this one to match federal standards. So that's the intent, if that answers a good chairman's question.
Representative Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Senate. So if I may kind of follow up, I just want to make sure that I'm clear. If we put this in our statutes and you're prohibited from getting a CDL forever, does that mean that if I'm living here, that then if I move to a neighboring state, that I cannot get a CDL there as well and then come back here and operate? If that's a federal thing that we're complying with, is that what we're saying here? Or if you can clarify that for me.
Chairman Burkhart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can't speak to what another state does, but what we're saying here is in Wyoming, you cannot get another CDL ever if you're convicted twice of human trafficking. And as I said, I don't like this. Government tells us do this or we'll cut your money and your ability to give those license. But at the same time, this is a pretty nasty crime when you look at the results of it. And I would encourage us to just meet the standard. Yeah, I know we're lacking truck drivers and we could use them, all the ones we can get. But again, this is one where to me, the crime outweighs any benefit we would get. So.
Any other discussion? Representative Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe the Good Country lawyer is absolutely correct. And when I go back and I pull up, that's kind of the tough part about these bills when we get them. So, what he has stated is absolutely correct. And I think this is a perfect example for us to go back and grab a second reading amendment to change out the C to an A. Because when you look at the statute, there's no disqualifications listed underneath C. And so that's one of those things that we just need to really look through this when we're going through this as a committee. And it's absolutely a good catch. And I appreciate the Good Country lawyer bringing it to our attention. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Burkhart's motion when the committee of the whole rise to the report and do so with a recommendation that House Bill 7 do pass. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. House Bill 7 has passed committee of the whole. And second reading. Majority Floor Leader Summers.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Mr. Chairman, I move that the committee of the whole rise and report.
Stand down. All right, members, before you get too carried away, he has to actually complete his task before we congratulate him. So Representative, your script is on the podium over there. Mr. Chairman.
Speaker Barlow. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move the committee of the whole report.
You've heard the motion. You've heard the motion. All those in favor? No, wait a minute. Oh, okay, wait a minute. I got to read my script too. You've heard the motion. All those in favor of the majority floor leader's motion, please say aye. Those opposed, no. Motion carries. Mr. Reading Clerk, please read the committee of the whole report.
Mr. Speaker, your committee of the whole, having had under consideration bills on general file, begs leave to report as follows. House Bill 42 do pass. House Bill 59 do pass. House Bill 78 do pass. House Bill 21 do pass. House Bill 22 do pass amended. House Bill 7 do pass. Representative Western, Chairman.
Representative Western.
Mr. Speaker, I move the committee of the whole report. This should be adoption of the committee of the whole report.
Thank you. You've heard the motion. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, no. Motion carries. Congratulations, Representative Western. Representative Oakley, would you like a privilege of the floor? Please proceed.
No. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is my distinct honor and pleasure to introduce to you my dear friend, Sarah Lowe, if you'd stand up. My separated at birth sister. Sarah's a 13-year veteran of law enforcement. She is currently serving as a deputy and an SRO, school resource officer for the Wind River Schools in Pavilion. She's also a small business woman running mounted patrol as well as individual horse training clinics. When she's not working at either of those, you might find her with me doing pack horse races or jumping out of a plane. So thank you for joining me in welcoming the incomparable Sarah Lowe. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Well, thank you very much. Welcome, Ms. Lowe. Maybe that explains some of the oddities we have with our colleague. Altitude sickness, maybe. Actually, that airplane thing is a good exercise for everybody. Members, I want to remind you about the two resolutions that are in the LSO staff office. Also remind you again about the cutoff tomorrow at noon. Please get your bills out and approved for introduction tomorrow. All right, our NCSL representative won't be here for this tomorrow, as previously announced. It's been rescheduled for next week. Committee reports.
House Bill 39, sponsored by Judiciary, pre-application determinations for licensing. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 1 Judiciary, to whom is referred House Bill 39, pre-application determinations for licensing, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Craigo, Oakley, Olson, Provenza, Washit, Yin, Swanitzer. Noes, Representatives Larson, Dan, and Representative Rodriguez Williams. Representative Olson, Chairman. House Bill 70, sponsored by Blockchain, Digital Identity Protection. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 1 Judiciary, to whom was referred House Bill 70, Digital Identity Protection, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Craigo, Larson, Dan, Oakley, Olson, Provenza, Rodriguez Williams, Washit, Yen, Swanitzer. Representative Olson, Chairman. House Bill 53, sponsored by Transportation, Military Department Discrimination or Harassment Grievances. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 8, Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs, to whom was referred House Bill 53, Military Department Discrimination or Harassment Grievances, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Baker, Brown, Burkhart, Burt, Henderson, McGuire, Obermueller, O'Hearn, Stivar. Representative Burkhart, Chairman.
Thank you. Reading clerk. All right, Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House adjourn until 10 a.m. tomorrow, Wednesday, the 16th day of February. So that's the 17th day. 16th day of February, 2022.
Thank you. Committee announcements. Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you. Your House Appropriations will meet on adjournment tomorrow to hear House Bill 6 and 79.
Chairman Paxton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 4
Education will meet tomorrow during noon recess to consider two bills, House Bill 29 Hathaway Scholarship and House Bill 30 increasing the cash reserves.
Thank you. Chairman Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 10, Labor, Health and Social Services, will meet tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, Wednesday, February 16th, in the east side, room 3 in the connector, to consider two bills. House Bill 33, Community Health Services Continued Redesign Efforts, and House Bill 32, Vaccine Requirements Limitations.
Thank you. Chairman Zwanitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 7, Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions, will meet tomorrow upon noon recess in EO5 to hear the following 4 bills: House Bill 62, Insurance Amendments; House Bill 80, Campaign Reports; House Bill 49, Election Reporting Requirements; and if we have time, House Bill 52, Timeline to Prepare and Process Absentee Ballots.
Chairman Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 1, Judiciary, will meet tomorrow, Wednesday, the 16th at 8 a.m. in Capitol Extension Room E001 and online to consider House Bill 003, Juvenile Justice Data Reporting, House Bill 0037, Juvenile Justice Data Reporting, House Bill 38, Contracts in Restraint of Trade, and House Bill 87, Insurance Investment Amendments. Oh, no, I'm sorry. You referred that to.
That was referred to
I don't know
committee
why
number
it's on
7.
My meeting list. Scratch the last one. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Chairman Greer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 9, Minerals, Business, Economic Development, will meet tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. In room 5, where we typically meet. We'll hear House Bill in this order: House Bill 45, 46, 9, and then 47.
Thank you, Chairman Greer. Any other announcements? Any other committee announcements? Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. So tomorrow, obviously, we have introductions. We'll have a second reading. Likely, if we're lucky, we might have a little committee of the whole prior to lunch, but I'll save the recalibration or the redistricting bill till afternoon. So redistricting bill will be in the afternoon. If we have enough time in the morning, we'll do a few committee of the whole of committee bills that have been read in and will be read in probably.
So members, it's my intention to try to get through the remaining committee bills, and then we may get started on some personal bills for introduction. Chief Clerks, we're going to get the list together and see where we are and how many we have, and we'll try to get those. If there are committee bills that chairman feel are getting dealt with otherwise, as happened today, there was a bill that the issue was being taken care of in another bill. They just asked that be removed from the list. So that'll be we'll have the order of business tomorrow, but certainly our attention is, obviously, we have the second reading on the bills we did today. We'll have introductions and then committee of the whole, depending on how long we go with the introductions. So, and then redistricting committee of the whole in the afternoon. So there'll be actually 2 separate committees of the whole tomorrow, likely. One in the morning and then the second one on redistricting in the afternoon. Or we can continue on and the chief clerk tells me, stick to the script. All right, any further business to come before the body? Any further business to come before the body? So members, I thank you. I know today may have challenged us, but I hope we feel like we've addressed the issue that came before us. For those that are interested, the vote sheet on that, it was not associated with the bill, therefore it's not put out in a digest in the same way as a vote otherwise. But we'll take the vote and we'll post it on the website with the materials that were also presented. So it'll be available to you and the public, just like anything else. It'll be in the digest anyway, but that happens at the end of the session when our journal committee finally signs off. So anyway, but it will be available to you on the website publicly. Or I guess Chief Clerk has some copies up front. And you can make more copies if you should like. So with that, seeing no further business before the House of Representatives this day, I do have one reminder. Tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen, is the governor's prayer breakfast. So if you have RSVP that you're going to be in attendance, please honor the governor and that event and be there. So continue to thank our sponsors, and if you have a little time tonight, every night there's a receptions to help educate us and connect us with our communities, keep us connected with our communities. So with that, no further business. Members, we are adjourned until 10 a.m. Wednesday, February 16th, which will be our third day of the 66th legislature's budget session. We are adjourned.